Did you know that 1 in 3 employees dreads meeting with their manager one-on-one? So if you manage 3 people, chances are at least one of them isn't looking forward to meeting with you. But before you panic or go on a witch hunt to figure out which one it is, there is some good news. And there are 3 simple strategies and tips that you can use starting today, starting with your next one-on-one, that will help you build better relationships and increase employee engagement. And as always, I'm going to share it through a rescue dog named Nala and her story. I'm Marcel, and I've been coaching leaders at every level since 2014, and I can tell you that almost all of them miss at least one of these. They seem simple, but somehow they just don't really get to them. So don't be that leader. Stay until the end. And when something resonates with you, it's maybe something you don't do right now, hit that like button for me. Now let's get on to Nala's story. Tip number 1. Follow the instruction manual. Quick backstory on Nala. Nala is available for adoption now through Pixie's Pen Pals. And that's a program that pairs dogs from area shelters with correctional facility inmates who've received training on how to train, socialize, and care for the dogs. But Nala needed a weekend foster for an adoption event that she was going to that Sunday. She had 48 hours to trust a complete stranger in a new environment. And she didn't start off as the most trusting pup in the first place. But what happened in those 48 hours is a lesson in leadership for all of us. Because her foster caregiver that weekend, someone named Samantha, knew to read her instructions. She came with a sheet that explained how to properly care for her and some of her quirks, like she doesn't like to be approached from behind. And Samantha took the time to understand and follow those instructions. Now, granted, human beings don't come with instruction manuals, but in a way we do. They're just hidden, right? We have our values that really guide, those principles that guide our behaviors. And we also have our personality preferences, our strengths, and all of those things. But how often do managers go beyond the basics of tell me about yourself and your experiences and your kids and family situations and all of that to really understand people in more detail? Do you know your team's core values? And if you don't, I have an exercise that I've linked to that is simple enough to use, but then often there are assessments and other things that you can find online to understand strengths, to understand personality styles, how people like to communicate and collaborate, and also understand motivations. And when I say motivation, you can't necessarily go to someone and say, hey, what motivates you? But you can ask questions about, hey, the last time that something you really were happy with an achievement, what was it about that achievement that really made you feel a sense of pride? And as they detail what it was and how they went about it, you'll learn, do they like autonomy? Do they like the recognition? Do they like the challenge? Those things can give you clues into what motivates them, even if they can't necessarily articulate it up front. But as I said, there are also different assessments that you can offer. But most importantly, it's just having that conversation with them beyond the basics. And research from Gallup shows that employees who feel seen and understood are more than twice as likely to be engaged. So take the time to get below the surface and understand their instructions. And for that matter, you may even want to do something that's called individual operating principles and then rolling those up into team operating principles. And that's where you have everyone detail their values, their strengths, the things that maybe are triggering for them or that kind of make them feel uneasy, and what to do when they're triggered, and how to recognize them and the type of recognition they like, how to give them feedback, all of those things. And you can roll those up into an overall document for the team to say, here, what are the things that we agree that we all will abide by as a team? So I encourage you, there's team operating principles online. Go check them out and get to know not just individuals, but your team as well, because that will make them feel seen, heard, and understood in a way that simply knowing that they have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old or a partner or whatever will do. Tip number 2, be generous with the treats. In other words, don't wait for the big wins. Nala would approach Samantha cautiously with when Samantha would open the treat bags. And Samantha didn't want to rush things or make a big deal, but she would simply go at Nala's pace, and she was generous with the treats to gain her trust a little bit. And in the same way, we can be more generous. We don't have to wait until a project is finished or even a check-in to observe and notice the effort. So what approach are they taking? How are they asking questions? Are they collaborating well? Are they going and getting the information that you suggested and pulling that all together? What is it about their approach that you can observe and compliment them on? Researcher Carol Dweck, who's famous for the growth mindset, found that when we praise effort, it actually helps spur innovation and just motivation in general, because that's when people aren't just focusing on the end goal, but they're motivated to try. So when checking in, you can say something like, I noticed you when you did this, and that had X impact. That made it clearer that we won't have that minimize misunderstandings, or that maybe feel like you understood my my approach and my preferences, that you heard what I was asking clearly. Whatever it is, praise that and recognize that even before the longer term goal is met. And that feels a lot better than that generic, good job, keep up the good work. Meanwhile, speaking of keeping up the good work, if you're enjoying this video, consider subscribing. More videos come out each week with that lesson for you that will also hopefully help some rescue pets find loving homes. Now on to tip number 3, be a moonager. And that means be present and observant without having to necessarily hover. Back to Nala's story. Samantha gave Nala space, but she also observed her body language. She observed whether or not Nala was approaching more comfortably, whether she, was hovering in a corner or made her approach and stayed in the same room with Samantha, seemed to relax, have more relaxed body language, all of those things. And we can do that as well. And even if we're not co-located with our employees, there's also observing how quiet or, if anything's changed in their behavior in team meetings, if anything changes in one-on-ones that you may notice, because it's important to observe what they may be experiencing, even if they're not being vocal about it. University of Michigan behavioral scientist Jeffrey Sanchez-Burks calls this the emotional aperture, where you're understanding, kind of reading the temperature, the landscape of what's going on with your team and staying observant. And that's important because people often are experiencing tremendous burnout and stress, and by the time a manager is made aware, they've already decided to quit. It can be as simple as naming what you observe. I noticed that you're quieter lately. I noticed that your deliverables the timelines are slipping a bit. Is there something you'd like to talk about? I'm here if you'd like to talk. And if they need to know about resources, maybe find out those resources first so that you can point them in that direction. But let them know that they matter more than just the performance. In fact, a 2024 Harris Poll survey showed that while 75% of people said that they were experiencing burnout, instead, I think it was 89% of managers believe that their employees are thriving. That's a big disconnect. And it's often attributed to leaders not paying attention and recognizing the signs of stress and burnout that their employees are experiencing. The point is that sometimes you don't have to be the therapist, but just the person who acknowledges that you notice that maybe they're quieter or things that have shifted, and you want to make sure that they know that you're there for them, or if there's something that you can do to help them rebalance work or reprioritize, or just let them know we just got to buckle down and get through this period, whatever it is. But that acknowledgement can go such a long way. So back to Nala. When Nala was at the adoption event, at one point she started to get a little overwhelmed. There were a lot of people, there were people behind her, people in front of her, around her, and excited, and there were little children running around. And so it was a lot for her. And she started to feel a little overwhelmed and get kind of agitated. But when Samantha walked up, She was excited, tail wagging. She jumped up to lick her and was just, you could tell. And I heard someone even say, oh, here's her person. And that was just after 2 days. And that's the thing. Now, your employees probably aren't going to jump up and lick you in the face, but at least they won't dread meeting with you. You will have established a connection that makes it so that they can talk to you, that you've established some psychological safety where they feel they're in a trusted environment, and you have observed what their needs are and anticipated or made it safe for them to talk about it. That's what happens when people and pups feel truly seen and heard. By the way, Nala is still looking for that loving home. So if you or someone you know may be interested, I've included a link to her adoption profile and an interest form. So share this information with them. She's loyal and sweet and ready to trust the right person.